This episode is brought to you by the Wholesome Fertility Method online program. This program includes video courses on understanding Chinese medicine patterns and how this reflects on cycle charting. It also includes foods shown to benefit fertility health, which products to avoid, supplements and herbs that are shown to improve sperm and egg quality, acupressure points, and essential oil recipes to optimize fertility health, mindfulness, breathing exercises, and much, much more. I'm providing a second round of spots, which include live coaching calls with the program for a limited time. To find out more, visit www.thewholesomefertilitymethod.com. Episode number 37 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist, here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Today, I welcome Heidi Brockmeyer, who is a licensed practitioner of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. She has a decade of experience helping women grow their families. She's supported hundreds of women in her clinic in San Diego and thousands of women around the world. Heidi has over 10 years of clinical experience as a fertility specialist and was mentored by 2 master fertility acupuncturists in her first 5 years of practice. Heidi teaches women to get pregnant through her Fertility TV YouTube channel and also offers an online program. She loves teaching women how to renew faith in their ability to conceive and to take back control of their health and their bodies. So welcome to the podcast, Heidi.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I'm really excited.
Me too. So I wanted to start off with asking if you can share how you embarked on your journey to learning Chinese medicine and then specializing in fertility.
Yes. So let's see. I embarked on my journey as a Chinese medicine practitioner. Well, it started when I spent a year in Korea, actually, after I graduated from, my undergraduate program, where I was a creative writing major. So totally different field.
Interesting.
Yeah. But when I was in college, I spent a semester in Nepal, and that cultural experience definitely blew my world open. And I think from that point, I felt much more connected to nature and a different kind of type of living, like a more nature-based living. It just opened my mind. And then when I was in Korea, I, for some reason, felt inspired to take a distance learning herbal studies course. It's a funny thing. I mean, we had the internet then, but it wasn't what it is today exactly. So I actually took this herbal studies course through the mail. It was out from a school in Oregon, and they would just send you all the materials, and you'd do all the homework and send them back through snail mail.
Right.
And I just fell in love with herbal medicine. And then I would go to the herbal markets in Korea, and I was just fascinated. I didn't know what any of the herbs were at that time. And I was like, they're sauteing millipedes, and they have all these dried seahorses in the shops. Like, what is that about? And then, just probably 2 years later, I was learning what the millipedes and the seahorses are used for.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So that's what got me started. I just became obsessed with natural medicine at that point, and I knew it was a path I wanted to pursue. And when I got back to the States, I have a cousin who's been an acupuncturist for, probably over 30 years now. And when I was 12 years old, he came and visited I was living in New York. That's where I grew up. And he came from California, and it was like, wow, my cool California cousin. And he put needles and, anybody who wanted to try it. And he did it for a couple of my cousins to quit smoking. And so I was exposed to it as well as a kid, and I just found it pretty fascinating. And lo and behold, I was like, yeah, I want to, practice some kind of natural medicine. And he convinced me that Chinese medicine was the way to go, because it's just such a sophisticated system that's been around for thousands of years, time tested on billions of people. So, and there's a whole licensing process here in the States. So it's it's legitimate. It's not just kind of obviously a hokey thing. So that's how I became. And once I started school for acupuncture, I just fell in love with it right away, and I knew that I was in the right spot. And then as far as becoming a fertility specialist goes, I usually say that it called me rather than me saying, I know that this is what I want to specialize in, and like I'm setting out to do that. It just kind of came to me. I was always drawn to women's health issues because we're so limited in terms of solutions that Western medicine has to offer. And that obviously always bothered me. And then, as I was going through the program, that's primarily what I used Chinese medicine for on myself was, if I had painful periods and like women's health, reproductive health related issues. And it just, as you obviously know, it just works so beautifully. And it was just like, this is obviously missing. We really need this.
Absolutely. Oh, totally.
So I was definitely drawn to supporting women's health. And then when I graduated, I was just like, I just need to start working. I'm a single mom. And, it's just like, this just has to happen right now. And then I cold called this busy clinic. And I was like, do you need any acupuncturists? And they're like, yeah, we specialize in fertility. Is that all right? And I was like, well, that sounds great. And again, because of the women's health, but also I was always drawn to helping emotional issues. And that was one of the things that I was interested in specializing in. And specializing in fertility is like the perfect blend of both of those worlds because...
Oh, totally. Completely.
Yeah. And then I just fell in love with it. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been so blessed to be invited to join this practice. And I was mentored by, these two amazing practitioners that had over 10 years experience each. And so I got to hit the ground running pretty much. And the patient base is amazing. I mean, as you obviously know, fertility patients, they're just so committed and, and it's great working with patients that are actually willing to implement.
I always say they're the most compliant patients you can ever find. They're all devoted and in
their pursuit of their health goals. And so devoted and just such smart women as well. And it's obviously it's such a rewarding experience to help them on this journey. As well as be able to give them that emotional support because a lot of times, they're not able to talk to their family or their friends, their usual support system because maybe, they have kids or they don't understand this particular journey and it can be so isolating. So I've always felt, I don't know if honored is necessarily the right word, but I've definitely felt fulfilled in being able to provide that emotional support for them along the way as well.
Yeah, it's definitely extremely rewarding. And just also to see the outcomes and the children and, the whole thing and follow them it's miraculous, really.
Oh yeah. It doesn't get any better than getting, a baby announcement card in the mail. I'm like, oh, thank you so much, and having a collection of those.
Yeah, there's really nothing better, nothing better.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. As a fellow acupuncturist, I know that many of us have our own interpretation of how Chinese medicine works. Like I've heard a couple of different ideas. And so I'd love to hear your explanation of how it heals.
Yeah. So, good question. Like, the spiel, so you want...
Yes, I know. I love the spiel, but I love hearing the spiel from everybody else because I feel like I learn every time I hear a different perception.
Yeah, totally. I just heard something last night, somebody explaining how meridians work on a show on Gaia, and I was like, oh, wow, that's so much different than the way that
you can include that too.
So that's great that you get to hear all the different perspectives. And yeah, well, I've actually, all right, so what I tell the women that come to me, the women that I support, both, have supported in my clinic as well as my online community, is I really emphasize the idea that, you're not broken from a Chinese medicine perspective. You're not broken. You're not a disease, especially when it comes to fertility. You may have been diagnosed with infertility if you've gotten, an official diagnosis from the doctor, or because you're not conceiving, then you may consider yourself labeled as infertile.
True. Totally. I don't like that word.
I don't like it either. I avoid using it if possible. I only use it in some certain contexts. And that's what I love about Chinese medicine, because, we don't treat the disease, we treat the person. And so I don't really see a person as, oh, you have this disease, you're this diagnosis, which and that's not to deny that there's something going on by any means, but Chinese medicine is looking at a person as a whole, and it's more like, well, where's the system blocked? What energetics are off here that need to be, so that you can be brought back into balance. So it's more just, I see, an infertility diagnosis is, okay, there's an imbalance, and the imbalance has gotten to maybe more of an extreme, so that your body needs support, rather than you have a disease, you're broken. And that, I think, is just such a, I've received feedback from so many women that that's just such a relief for them. And to thank you for, affirming that I'm not broken. And it's just a much more empowering place to start from as you are in supporting your fertility and implementing what, you prescribe as their acupuncturist or whatever, healthcare regimen they're implementing in their lives. So Chinese medicine looks at the body as, as a whole, your spirit, your emotions, your mental health, your physical well-being, and addresses imbalances. So, as we use our own diagnosis from a Chinese medicine point of view, we're looking for specific patterns of imbalance and how we can support your body coming back into balance, because your body has this innate wisdom and it knows what, it's all about supporting the body in doing what it wants to do. It can do what it's supposed to do better than any way that we interfere. So it's about giving that support. And, I like to keep it simple when I explain how Chinese medicine works. And one of the basic foundation principles is the idea of, I forget how you say it in Mandarin. I don't know if I ever knew how you said it exactly in Mandarin. One of my teachers could always say it perfectly. But the saying goes, where there's flow, there's health. Where there's a blockage, there's disease. So it's really as simple as that. And and using acupuncture, herbs, diet, qigong, all of the tools of Chinese medicine. Because I also like to educate people to understand that Chinese medicine is so much more than just acupuncture. Acupuncture is one of the tools of Chinese medicine.
It's true.
But Chinese medicine is really, it's a way of life, which is what I am passionate about teaching people, because it's so empowering when you understand some of the basic principles of Chinese medicine and seeing your health through the lens of Chinese medicine, so that you can sustain your health, knowing some of these things. So, the meridians that run throughout the body, they can get the energy and the blood flow can get bottlenecked in some areas, so that, downriver, there isn't enough flow, there isn't enough nutrition, there isn't enough energy. And then at the area where there's the blockage, there's excessive amounts of energy that can cause a different type of problems. So it's all about balancing the flow so that you can increase circulation to the reproductive organs, so that your hormones can be balanced, so that you're in your, when there's blocked flow, you're more tense, you're more in your fight or flight nervous system. So it's about calming the nervous system and supporting your body to be able to do what it wants to do, which is be in perfect health.
Yes, exactly. It's very similar to how I say it, and I kind of I like to always also compare it to like a little machine with circuits or highways. But
Uh-huh.
it basically I say the same thing. I mean, the body's designed to heal. That's where it wants to go. That's where it's programmed to go. And all we need to do is help it go that way. So we're not actually the healers, it's the body that's healing itself.
Exactly. That's what I love. I've been even, kind of steering away from the word healing, and even though obviously you need to use this word for, you know, I'm a healer, or let's heal your fertility and so forth. But healing is this idea that you're doing something for the other person rather than just providing the right conditions for the body to heal itself.
Right.
And and especially with fertility,
It's a much more empowering way to look at
yeah,
it.
and that's really what I like to talk about. Is it's not about putting your health in somebody else's hands. It's not about, even an
Mhm.
acupuncturist. It's not about putting your health in the acupuncturist's hands or your doctor's hands. You're partnering with healthcare practitioners so that they can support you.
I love that. It's a great way to look at it. I love that. And it's true for everything, really. And I think a lot of times, even with well meaning doctors that don't understand the body the way we do, as far as preventative, a lot of times, and my husband's a doctor, he's an emergency medicine
Oh
physician,
wow.
and he tells me that it's so many doctors just don't like the term I don't know. So they'll give you some kind of diagnosis,
Mm.
even though they haven't they just don't know from the scope of understanding. Everybody has a perspective. And so they'll give a diagnosis which could be considered like a hex for the
Oh
patient
yeah.
because you see it then it takes up the mental belief of the
Yeah.
patient, and many patients look at the doctor like they have way more control over their bodies or more of an understanding over their bodies than
Mm.
they do. And I find that your perspective is so refreshing because it's so important to partner with
Hmm.
the person that you're getting treatment from, and also finding the right person that aligns with you, because even the best acupuncturist is not aligned with every single patient. So it really is a beautiful way to look at it, to find a partner that you're compatible with in your healing process.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's good to recognize the responsibility that we each have in our own health, and that's again more empowering in that we have to advocate for ourselves as well. And because not obviously there's some doctors out there that and or holistic practitioners that are really supportive of partnering with you, and recognizing what your goals are, like, oh, if you want to conceive naturally, and supporting that. And but other doctors and practitioners kind of, they like the position of feeling like, I know more than you. I'm not going to listen to what you're telling me you're feeling in your body because I know more
Mhm.
about your body. And that can feel
Right.
like, as the quote unquote patient, as the person that's like seeking out support, that you don't have a say in things. And that can go both ways. It can be that you're actually not taking responsibility for advocating for yourself and expecting everybody else to have all of these answers. But it can also be like you feel like you're not allowed to have a voice when you're discussing things with any kind of practitioner. And so it's a mindset shift, to really
Mhm.
understand that partnership. And it can be hard because it's so vulnerable going to doctors. It's like, especially fertility patients can go and think,
It
oh,
is.
well, the next not logical step is that I go to a fertility specialist, and that woman may think, well, I still want to try naturally and to get pregnant and see what can be done to support that. But for one thing, a fertility doctor is not interested in or doesn't really have the tools that's not their forte, helping you figure out how you can conceive
Right. That's not what they
naturally.
studied.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting because I just had a patient that said every time I leave the doctor's office, I feel defeated. Like she gets drained and exhausted, and she has to kind of work herself back up, which is sad. And the thing is, there are a few reproductive endocrinologists that I found that are incredibly empowering. So I do want to say that because there are some that are very positive and have been amazing, and once they shift to the right RE, then they do a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of types of doctors, and some are more supportive than others. But I think women they can be taken by surprise because they don't know that they're going to necessarily feel so defeated, and they're not mentally prepared. Not that you can even necessarily mentally prepare yourself for that, but you could go in there and be told, no, there's no chance you're ever going to conceive naturally. In fact, you should use an egg donor, and you should do it now. And it's just like, what? And
I know.
I'm sure you've heard that you had women come into your office in tears after that experience. And that's a case where it's like you certainly want to take these medical opinions. You want to evaluate them, and there may be truth to that. What's the best choice for you, but just to also understand that it's your job to advocate for yourself as well, and consider other options, get second opinions, consider the opinions of a naturopath or an acupuncturist and so forth, so that you have the full picture, and that you're not just, being controlled by, you don't feel like you don't have any say, and that you have to take whatever you're being told by anyone as like the be all end all.
I'm sure that this is going to help a lot of people listening. I bet somebody just came from the doctor or is making an appointment. And, I think that is a great thing just to know, even when you're walking into the office. I don't want to say take it with a grain of salt, but just take it with understanding that it is a perspective. And nobody knows everything, because we just, even as amazing as our scientists are in the world, they've only discovered a fraction of what really is, even smaller, a fraction of a fraction. So, there's so much more to our bodies and our abilities than we even know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I watched a lot of your YouTube videos, and I actually really enjoyed them. You did a great job, and you have so much information, and extremely empowering information, actually, for a lot of people to view. And I wanted to ask you just if you could share what the easiest practices that you believe everybody should consider, like, starting immediately.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for the compliments. It definitely means a lot coming from another fertility acupuncturist as well. It's like, okay, sure. So some of the easiest practices, I would say, a castor oil pack. Learning how to do castor oil packs is probably pretty easy. I have a YouTube video that teaches women how to use castor oil packs in both over the liver as well as the low abdomen. And it's really easy to get the supplies. It's really easy to do it. It's quite relaxing, and it can make a huge difference. So it can help with cleaning out the uterus, especially if there's a lot of stagnation. If you're somebody that has, a lot of clots with your period, or, dark flow, cramping, PMS symptoms, or, endometriosis, fibroids, and so forth. The castor oil packs can really help to soften that tissue and pull out toxins like, estrogens and so forth, and help your uterus cleanse and just relax the muscles in your pelvic area, so that the reproductive organs can better align themselves. Sometimes our reproductive organs misalign because of muscle tension. And then doing it over your liver as well. I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, but I've heard it from other acupuncturists that all roads lead to the liver. And so
Yes.
it's pretty safe to say. And I think,
It's so true. It's like, yeah.
every person, not just women, but every person's liver is involved when it comes to any kind of health issues. We all have some degree of liver stagnation, as we call it, like stuck liver energy.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
of our
that's why
livers
Xiaoyao
need
san is
support.
just like it's taken like candy.
Yeah, exactly. So a castor oil pack is such an easy way to also support your liver, soften it, as we would say, and then you feel so much better. It's kind of like something that you can do that can give you the effect of Xiaoyao san, free and easy wander. That's the translation, right? So you're like,
Yes, exactly. So it's a formula that we've given most. I think it's one of the most prescribed formulas out there because it's also safe to give to teenagers and any kind of hormonal balance. But most people can use it easily.
ooh, thanks for that reminder, because I have a teenage boy, and I'm like, I need,
Yes.
and I have a bunch of Xiaoyao-san. I'm like, I'm gonna go
Oh, there
give
you
it.
go.
See, I'm learning from this interview as well.
See, and it's funny because it's all things we know, but it's just you need that reminder.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since I'm always in the fertility zone. So I'm just like Chinese medicine and fertility. And then because I've like, oh yeah, I can use it for this and this and this.
It's true. It's a whole different. It's a different animal, and you get really
Mhm.
absorbed in that realm. But
Exactly.
yeah, it's pretty much everything. But I want to say that castor oil pack is super relaxing as well. It really is great to finish the day with.
Hmm.
And it just eases you into a good sleep. It prepares your body to relax. So I love
Hmm.
it as well. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it really helps too if you have a lot of symptoms with your period and with PMS as well. So because it just softens the liver, as well as you can do it over your uterus. I teach women to do it over their uterus during the first half of their cycle, and then over their liver during the second half of their cycle. And it just keeps you more in the flow. So when your liver is more relaxed, which is what the castor oil pack can do, then you're more relaxed and you're more in that flow. Just like I mentioned earlier, when there's flow, there's health. When there's blockage, there's disease. So the more we're just in the flow, we feel better. We're in the flow in our lives and relating to other people. We're just happier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also good for
And I
quality of
think
life.
everybody can relate to times where they felt more in the flow, whatever it was,
Absolutely.
and everything working out just great. And then going against the flow, everybody can relate to certain points in their life. And, all these things with Chinese medicine, which is what I love so much, is that it's so relatable. It's
Yeah.
6,000 years old or more. I don't know how, because a lot of books were burned and damaged,
Uh-huh.
but so nobody really knows exactly how old it is, but
Mhm.
it's been around forever, yet it's so relevant.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I guess humans haven't changed that much.
Yeah. Or nature is just it's so in tune with the flow of nature, and nature's
Exactly.
nature. It just constantly repeats and just
Mhm.
evolves but repeats. It has
Yeah,
the same essence.
it's timeless. Yeah, and that's what I love about teaching Chinese medicine too, and how you can implement it in your daily life as a non-Chinese medicine practitioner. Because
Mhm.
it's not a fad that in 5 years it's gonna be like, oh my god, everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is the thing to do, like
Right.
eat like a bag of carrots every day, and it's like a year later it's like, oh, actually this is terrible for you.
Right.
uh,
Right.
this is
Exactly.
just it's timeless. It's always going to be helpful, and it's not going to just it's not going to be contradicted in just a few years, which makes our job a lot easier too, right? We don't have to like
It
uh,
definitely does.
be like, what's the latest? What's the latest? I mean, of course, we like to know what the latest research is in proving that what we already know, that Chinese medicine works, but just to help our patients trust it. But we just it's the same principles used again and again. And it is based
It
in
is.
science. People think, oh, is it just like this magic woo woo? And it's like, no, that, science is observation. And this is thousands of years of
Right.
very close
Exactly.
observation of the principles of nature, which is science, So, yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's also holographic, which means that, not only does it just withstand the test of time, but it also repeats itself, not only within
Mm,
your body, your whole body's in your ear, your whole body's in your foot, not just with the meridians,
mhm,
but also with your life. You can
mhm.
see the yin and the yang and everything and all the elements in every part of your life, in relationships, in your mind. It's amazing. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Exactly. You can't, it changes your life. It changes how you see life. And that's the other reason I'm so passionate about teaching it. Cause I'm like, I can't imagine living my life without this information now. Like it's having a completely different lens to look at everything, every aspect of my life. And uh, those of, uh, those of us in the West or anywhere who haven't been raised in this culture, we're really missing out because it creates such a balance to life that we're missing in Western culture.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And it just, it invites an awareness, a certain type of
Hmm.
awareness that brings about more vitality. And, who doesn't need that? It's
Exactly.
vitality. It's like calm alert, calm energetic, And
Hmm.
so on that note, I wanted to talk more about emotions. So obviously from our training, we understand how linked emotions are to our organs and our body. We talk about liver, especially. So can you share how emotions can help or harm fertility health?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just watching this show on the Gaia network last
I
night.
love Gaia.
Oh
I
my gosh,
love it.
it's
Tell me
amazing.
which show, because I'll watch it.
It's called Emotion. You have to watch it. I got like chills just even saying the title. I have to watch it.
I've
I'll probably
seen
watch it
that.
like 4 times.
It's great.
It's so good the
Awesome.
way everybody explains the little tidbits. But one of the women who was a speaker on there, she was saying, and this is something that I've talked about in my own practice and in online posts and stuff, that we as women we have a lot of emotions that are stored in our reproductive organs. For one thing, there's an energetic channel pathway in Chinese medicine that connects the heart to the uterus.
Hmm.
And so, literally, our heart is directly connected to our womb. And we've
Hmm.
all experienced sexual trauma, whether you've actually been physically traumatized or not, just, as a collective, the collective consciousness, just knowing how, women are treated in our world, and violence against women, sexual violence against women, whether or not it's actually happened to us,
Hmm.
we're still energetically experiencing that because we're empathizing with the whole, and we're empathizing with being a woman. And
That's
um,
such an important point that you bring up. It's true. We'd be fooling ourselves to think that we're not all connected and we don't have this like invisible thread that connects us all to each other's pain. We do feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the fear alone, because we've been, conditioned to have such fear just for being a woman. So
Mhm.
that fear alone is going to impact us. But let alone, probably the majority of women have experienced some kind of sexual trauma throughout their lives, if not multiple, as well as miscarriages, abortions, so on and so forth. And we're not so much of this we're really not allowed to talk about openly. We have to kind of carry that pain, guilt, shame, fear, anger, grief, all of those feelings, inside of us, and that causes blockage. Again, it's the free flow versus blockage. And so, in Chinese medicine, the emotions are just not separate from the physical body. It's just, we compartmentalize everything from a Western standpoint. It's like the foot, you go
Mm-hmm.
to a foot doctor, eye, you go to an eye
Right,
doctor, and
right,
so forth.
right.
If you have emotional problems, you go to a therapist, and which is great. I mean, in some ways that definitely makes sense, of course, but at the same time, it's just like, none of this is separate. And of course, our thoughts are not separate from our physical body. I mean, you have a thought and you can immediately feel the impact on your physical body. If you think of something that's scary or anxiety provoking, you're going to feel that right away in some part of your body. And
Right.
as you know, Chinese medicine is so sophisticated that it understands how the specific emotions can affect the body in specific physical ways, as well as the spiritual aspects of our being. So there's a spirit and there's an emotion that's associated with each organ system. So we've been talking about the liver. So, the liver is processing anger, and the spiritual aspect of the liver system, which is the wood element, is the hun, which means the soul. So that's our life purpose, our soul's purpose. So, the purpose of anger, and especially for women, we generally repress anger because we're told we're not supposed to be angry. But then all this, horrible stuff happens to us, and we're supposed to be all like nice and smiley about it. And but anger is very purposeful. Obviously, we don't want to be reactive to it and go out and be violent, but it teaches us what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, when to take action on something, what boundaries we need to implement, put in place in our
absolutely.
life. And this is all very necessary and very healthy. And so, when and the liver just also processes emotions in general. So if there's any repressed emotion, then, the liver energy is also going to be affected and get blocked. So that's one example. So, we can, and the liver circulates directly to the reproductive organs. The liver has a huge impact on our reproductive health. It regulates your cycle, your hormonal ebb and flow. It regulates the circulation, the blood flow to and from your uterus. It's like releasing the blood at the time of your period. I mean, it's pretty much running the show. So when you have this blocked anger or repressed emotions, it will affect your hormonal balance. It's going to affect the flow to your reproductive organs. Like if you think about endometriosis and fibroids and so forth, that's a lot. That polycystic ovaries, there's a lot of blocked liver energy there. And so, emotions it's energy. And when they get stuck in our body, then it's stuck energy, and stuck energy causes blockage. And I don't think
Absolutely.
I don't think that we're, really taught from, the time that we're children, how to process emotions. And generally speaking, culturally, we're a culture of emotional repression. And I think that that's changing as our consciousness is evolving. But it's, that's why it can be so challenging for us to know how to even know where to begin to processing a lot of these emotions. And it can be very overwhelming and scary. And that's where Chinese medicine is also so amazing, because it can really be so supportive in gently helping you both physically and emotionally process those emotions. And as you see these things open up, like you're releasing emotions, and then you're having, like physical symptoms are relieving because the flow has been restored. And then you can also see this open up in your life. Maybe you're like, oh, you know what, this job, I need to quit this job, or, this relationship's not right, or you're start attracting what you do want in your life, because none of this is separate from each other. It's like you said, it's holographic.
It totally is. And it's interesting that you're saying this, because this is what actually got me to change my career and go into acupuncture. I used to be an architect, and I went to an acupuncturist, and I know I had liver issues big time, because I used to miss like 3 cycles of my periods at a time. I wouldn't get my period in, anywhere from 3 to 4 months between. And I went to an
Mm.
acupuncturist. And after that, what was interesting is I realized, first of all, my emotions changed. He was helping my period, but he probably knew that he was doing more than that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
my emotions changed, and my skin got better. I didn't have as much acne before getting my period. I wasn't as irritable. And I also changed my job. It wasn't aligned with my highest self.
Mhm.
So it was like everything it changed. It was just like we were saying, it's holographic. It touched upon every part of my life. It healed every single part of my life. It's incredible how simplistic of a medicine it is,
Mhm.
in the way that it's given, but yet how powerful it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's cool. What a perfect example to share after I talked about
I know
that.
it's like you're speaking my life, but I would say you're speaking everybody's life
Mhm.
that's been really touched by it,
Mhm. Yeah, and what I love too is that let's say you need emotional support, and from a Western standpoint, you go to a therapist, and there's a lot of therapists out there that actually employ kind of body and mind techniques, not just talking. But what I love about
Yeah.
Chinese medicine is exactly that we can deal with the emotional aspect by supporting the liver, by doing a castor oil pack. A lot of times
Right.
you might find that you have an emotional
Something you could just do at home.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you don't have to. I think if you're not using the body as a tool to also move emotional energy and spiritual and mental energy, then you're making it a lot harder. It can help things shift, and that's what's so beautiful about Chinese medicine. It's all wrapped in one package to facilitate this. You know, um, Restoring that flow in your life and in your body.
Right. It looks at you as whole, and it treats
Hmm.
you in a holistic way. It really does. It takes it all.
Exactly. That's a beautiful way to summarize it.
And since we were speaking about menstrual cycles, we were just talking. I mean, I was going to ask you about that, but we kind of touched upon it. Just how important a menstrual cycle is. I never really realized it until I mean, I knew I needed to address it. And it finally got to the point where I was like, I got to do something about this, which is when I went to the acupuncturist. But
Hmm.
when I went to him, I remember him mentioning, it's super important for women to have a normal, regular cycle. And I knew it was important, but then I was like, it kind of was, it struck me when he said that. He goes, for women, it's very important. It really is. I don't think that a lot of people realize that, getting cramps or getting PMS, which in China they're going to say is not normal,
Hmm.
which a lot of people don't realize it's not a life sentence. It's not something you have to live with.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, just of course you didn't know how important it is. And none of us did growing up and I didn't know either until I started, going to school for Chinese medicine, because we're not even taught we're taught not to talk about our periods. Most women didn't
Right.
even know what like cervical mucus. Most women don't know about cervical mucus unless they're starting to
Hmm.
try to conceive. I mean, I didn't know anything about it until I was looking into like natural birth control options in my 20s. But I was just like, what's cervical mucus? I was like, oh my gosh, I always
Yeah.
thought that there was something wrong with me. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it's,
It's crazy,
yeah.
right? You're like, what is this? Why is this, what do I see this? But now she's going to kill me if she hears me talking about this. But I talked to my daughter about it, because it's important. I want her to know this. Like, as soon as she starts her cycle, I just want her to know this. Thank God she
Mhm.
doesn't really listen to my podcast because it's not really interesting to her. But it's something that I think every parent should teach their daughters as soon as they figure out or learn about their bodies, because it's something that I think everybody should know.
Yeah, that's the other, besides with fertility, well, in women's health in general, like this really, like, teenage girls need Chinese medicine in their lives, because so many teenage girls
Mm-hmm.
have, like, obviously irregular cycles and really painful periods, and how stressful is that for them in their high school years, and disruptive,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're, like, so embarrassed they can't talk about it or whatever. They're doing sports, and maybe
Yeah.
then their periods are skipping, and then they go to the doctor, and the doctor puts them on birth control, and they're on birth control till they're in their 30s.
That was my life story.
Yeah. And then that sets them up for like a higher likelihood of breast cancer and all sorts of stuff. In fact, on a separate note, there's this woman in San Diego. She does breast thermography. You should interview her on your podcast, but we can talk about that later.
Oh, please send me her information. Email it to me as soon as we finish. I would love it.
Yeah, you would love talking to her. And she's an acupuncturist as well.
Awesome.
But, like, our breast health gives us so much insight as well into our overall health, just like our period does. But yeah, it's
right. And then we talk about breast tenderness before getting our period. That's also that's a symptom from liver imbalance.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the beauty of our cycles, that, it's giving us so much information, so much biofeedback for us to have a conversation with our bodies, with ourselves, and understand, what's going right and what's not going right, so that we can course correct. Whereas, men, it's a lot harder when I, do an intake with a guy, which I'm sure this is your experience too. It's like, they're harder to understand what the pattern is, because, for one thing, guys aren't necessarily as in touch with their bodies, but also they don't have these cycles. Like, if I don't even have to ask women necessarily, I do, but I wouldn't have to necessarily ask them about, their digestion, or if they get headaches or this or that. If I just ask them about their cycle, I'm already like, oh, I have so much information here. I could probably,
Yeah. It's like a bulk.
Yeah, I could probably figure out what your imbalance is just from talking about your period and your cycle. So it's a wonderful method of biofeedback. It's a wonderful way for us to be in tune with ourselves, which makes sense because it's a rhythm. It's like, our cycles are literally a rhythm that's connected with the moon, the energetics of the earth, the moon, the sun. And, and I think that it's so powerful, which is why, it's been repressed throughout the ages, because that power is, like, scary to the patriarchy, but that's a whole other subject. But
right. But, and you know what it is? It is all consciousness. It's collective consciousness. And it's something that we're moving out of. It's changing and shifting. There's, like, a lot of resistance, and we're definitely moving to a new direction. I can feel it. Yeah. And I was actually going to mention to you about the moon, because I've always noticed my cycle come with the moon. And I remember going to an acupuncturist before I went to school, and that's when I learned that ideally you get your period with the new moon and you ovulate with the full moon. I used to always be the opposite, which I heard people do shift and ebb and flow between. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, shifting to, like, getting your period on your full moon or new moon.
I'm not an expert in that department. I think theoretically it sounds great, but I don't. It's certainly not one of my goals, because there's already enough of a goal. Like, let's shrink fibroids. Yeah. Let's get you ovulating regularly. And I think, being like, and on top of that, let's, like, sync up with the moon would be,
no, I don't use that in my treatment either, or that's like a high goal, but people do I do say, just pay attention.
Totally. I think that's
your cycle and the moon.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing. And I know that there are some people out there that's like, there's like a yoga fertility specialist who has an online program and so forth, and her whole thing is syncing up with the moon, and she has all these moon meditations, and I think that that's awesome, and I wish I did know more about it. I wish I could, that'll be the next thing I should learn. It's just, I know
it's intriguing. I've always found it intriguing, because before I even studied it, I would notice that I'd always get my period in the full moon. And then I remember going to the acupuncturist, and she told me, ideally you'd get it on the new
Yeah.
moon, but sometimes it shifts. And then somebody had told me, actually one of my patients, that she heard that people who get it in their full moon are a little bit more outside the box thinkers, which I always have been. I used to sleep during the day and stay up all night and do creative things. So I was, you hear different things from different people.
Yeah, exactly.
So I
That's
was
what
just
I've
curious
heard
to
as well.
see, like,
So, which is partly why I haven't pursued it further, because I'm like, this is the information doesn't also seem to be consistent enough for me to, like really use that as a compass. But I wonder what the Chinese would say, because it's not something we learned in school either. I don't know if maybe that information really kind of got lost in the throughout time, probably. But I wonder what they would say, because that's the system I trust. So.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely look into it, and you look into it, and then we'll
Okay,
exchange
sounds
notes.
good. We'll have to have a follow-up discussion, a follow-up podcast on just that topic.
Exactly, just the moon, the Chinese perspective of the moon.
To be continued.
So exactly. So I do love the fact that you consider the spirituality and the soul. Definitely not something that a lot of Western science understands. And Chinese medicine does. They always consider the spirit in healing as part of the healing process. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the idea of the child's soul, the baby soul in alignment, because I have heard a lot about that, and I thought I just find it very intriguing.
It's something that I like to remind women of, that, there's another being involved. And because obviously, you do need to prepare your physical, your emotional health. You need to prepare your health in general so that your body is in a healthier state to get pregnant and carry a baby to term, have a healthy pregnancy and baby, and so forth. But, women can obviously get really wrapped up in the mechanics of it all. Like, am I eating the right things? Am I taking the right supplements? Am I having intercourse at the right time? And so on and so forth. And then forget, or, we lose perspective that, well, there's a whole other being that's involved here. And maybe it's just not the right time for them to come in. We've all heard those stories about people who tried for, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, didn't get pregnant, and then gave up. And then at some point, whoosh, out of nowhere, the baby comes in. Yeah. And I think it's just a helpful perspective to remember, because it takes a bit of the pressure off and the personalization of, like, maybe, I'm not doing this right. I'm not, something's wrong with me. I'm doing everything, but I'm still failing. What rock have I not looked under? And it's like, you're doing great. You're doing the best that you can. But maybe this baby is just not ready yet. It's not the perfect timing. But again, it's still important to do what you can do on your end, obviously, because maybe there's some energetic shift that the baby's waiting for in your life. And that this journey, this difficult journey, is actually the catalyst for you having this shift. Like, for you, in your case, like, you had health issues, and then it led to you changing your career, and so you had this huge shift in your life. And not that it has to be that dramatic for everybody, where they're making some giant change in their life. It could be much more subtle, but it could be forgiving somebody that you've been holding a grudge against all this time. And of course, it's normal to ask the question of, like, why me? Well, it doesn't make sense. I see this woman who's, like, living on the streets, and she's just drinking, like, she's obviously a terribly unhealthy lifestyle. Maybe she's even doing meth or whatever, and doesn't have teeth, and she's able to get pregnant, no problem. So that just doesn't make any sense. And no, it doesn't make any sense. It's definitely one of those, like, what's up with that, God? Or, whomever.
Yeah.
But
it's true.
A different being is meant to be with that woman, and, a different life path is meant for that soul, that spirit, that went to a woman and whatever other situation. But the being that's destined to be with you, has a life path that's unique to being with you. And so, things, there's a lot of, there's just so much going on behind the scenes that we have no idea about. And, to remember that there's probably a certain alignment that needs to take place for that spirit to come in. And I think it's a nice perspective too, because it does add more, it brings the sacred element of your journey to the forefront. And, it's such a difficult journey trying to conceive. And, some are just even way harder than others. I mean, I'm sure you've heard all sorts of like, oh my gosh, how does this woman have the strength to keep going? And, but there's so, like any of our struggles in lives, that's when we grow the most. It teaches that, there's so many gifts that, that come from, whatever struggle we've been faced with. So I think it just keeps that
Absolutely. And I also want to say that it's interesting because it's such a mystery. And I tell this to my patients when they come in. I say, it is, I could do my best, and I've learned a lot. And I don't think that there's a coincidence that you came in. There's something that called you to want to do more and learn more about your body and take certain actions. But on the other hand, it's a complete mystery. Some of it's in our hands and some of it's completely out of our hands. But one thing that I can say that has been consistent is depending, and it doesn't depend on what people do or what path they take. At the end of the day, whether it's finally being able to conceive naturally, or conceiving with IVF, or conceiving with an egg donor, or an embryo adoption, or actual adoption, like, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, when the people choose their path and they have the child in their arms, they say everything happened exactly as it should. And I don't regret one single step. And that is, during the process, it's a bitch, to have to go through everything and the ups and downs and the unknown, but it's amazing how in the end it makes sense.
I love that. Yeah, I got chills when you said that.
Yeah, it gives me chills just to think about it, because that's the mystery. It's the calling. And I really do think that, there's an empowering way of looking at this. It's the fertility calling. Something's calling you, whether it's a child or it's an embryo or it's who knows, something's calling you. And like I said, every single person that's been at the end of this will say yes, 100%. People going through it may not say that or may not see it, but it's a type of calling. And it's almost like you said, fertility called you. I feel the same way about these people going through this. It's almost like an honor call, and it's actually empowering. Why me? And I don't want to say this in an insensitive way, because maybe people are actually feeling that way, which I totally understand. I see it as an empowering thing too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for the purpose of, learning so much more about your body, and that's going to benefit you for life. Maybe what you learn on your path to conceiving, which was more difficult than you hoped or expected it to be, will actually save your life down the line, so that you don't get cancer, or you don't get MS, or, an autoimmune disease or so forth,
It's true. And then some people discovering that they have an autoimmune disease because of this. It's like as if the child saved their lives. I mean, it's incredible.
Exactly. I mean, we wish, it's totally understandable. We wish we had control over these things. Any woman going through this is like, yeah, I wish I could just like wave a magic wand and make this happen. Or why don't the doctors know more? Why can't the doctors, it's also frustrating because we're used to the idea of Western medicine where we go, especially if we're paying a lot of money out of pocket for some procedure, like you go.
Yeah. Just give me something now.
Exactly. Like my leg is broken. I'm going to go to the doctor, and I know that the doctor's going to fix my leg. Like it's this guarantee. Thank you, Western medicine, but when it comes to fertility, obviously the it's not a guarantee, and the stats aren't even that great considering how much money we spend and the expectations we have. It's like, wait, what?
Right.
30% chance after I go through all of this and spend all this money? And like, I thought Western medicine had more answers than this. And I wish that there was more control over this. And that's totally understandable. And I wish that for women as well. But at the same time, it's also like, the mystery of conception. It's like, I don't, it's something that's also sacred. Like, we should only have so much control over that,
I agree with you. That is such a great way to put it. I just got the chills. We should only have so much control over that. I mean, that phrase is just beautiful. It's just complete respect for the process. And I love that. You can't control that. It's in the hands of the universe, in the mysterious energy that creates all.
Yeah, which is what I've been finding to be the underlying lesson in almost everybody's life struggle, whether it's with relationship or, health issues or money issues. It's the surrender. It's surrendering control is pretty much what we're all here to learn.
I love that. Yes.
Trust. Exactly.
Like complete trust.
And faith. Yeah.
Oh my God. I love it. I thoroughly enjoyed this interview. This is so much fun to speak with you. We're so, it's fun to speak to a colleague and a fellow acupuncturist, fertility acupuncturist, but also somebody who I find that I really relate to energetically. So it's been such an honor to have you on. And I wanted to also let you tell the listeners how they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I equally have enjoyed this conversation, and it's been so fun. And it's so refreshing talking to somebody so like-minded. So thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy. Thank you for letting me share with people how they can find me. I guess the best way is my website, HeidiBrockmeyer.com. I have a ton of resources on there, the castor pack instructions, as well as a bunch of other, things that you can do at home, and just posts on understanding how Chinese medicine works. There's a free download, the fertility activation checklist. And then I also have a Facebook group called Balance and Restore. It's a free Facebook group where women are also holistically minded on their journey to trying to conceive. And that's a great community if you want support. And you can, if you go to my website, then you'll be able to find out from there how to join the Facebook group. So HeidiBrockmeyer.com is probably the best starting place.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And who knows, maybe we'll do a part 2.
Yeah, that would be good. I look forward to it. I'll get on that moon cycle research from a Chinese medicine perspective.
I know, that's kind of cool. You never know what you're going to find. Probably a lot.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Learn more. All right. Thank you as well, Michelle.
Absolutely. So that concludes today's episode. You can find all the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review. Reviews are everything to podcasters. You can find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com. And please be on the lookout for my online course and program. This course has emerged from everything that I've been using for the fertility program I now offer at my office. I wanted to consolidate all of my suggestions and coaching and put it into a form that anyone can purchase and use. It was important for me to encompass key fertility health factors, as well as guide you in implementing changes in your routine that are shown to boost fertility while being realistic and user-friendly. I will be offering this course with and without coaching. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com, where you can find the subscription form. I thank you so much for listening in and hope you have a beautiful day.